Somewhere in the chaos of the Second World War, an entire room disappeared. Walls of amber, gold leaf, gemstones, and mirrors, assembled over decades, moved across empires and worth, by today's estimates, close to $200 million. It was once called the eighth wonder of the world, and in the final months of the most destructive war in human history, it simply vanished. No one has found it since. This is the story of the Amber Room, an idea that became a symbol then a statement, and ultimately an obsession that has consumed historians, treasure hunters, and intelligence agencies for nearly 80 years. 1701, the Kingdom of Prussia. King Friedrich I commissioned something that had never been attempted before. He wanted a room, an entire room, decorated entirely in amber. Every wall, from floor to ceiling, encased in the material. The project was assigned to German Baroque sculptor Andreas Schlüter, who designed the concept, and Danish amber craftsman Gottfried Wolfram, who began the physical work. Amber is fossilized tree resin. It forms over millions of years underground and has been prized since prehistoric times for its warm, translucent beauty. Baltic amber, in particular, was considered among the finest in the world, pulled from the shores and seabeds of what is now the northern coast of Europe. For the Prussian court, using it to line an entire room was an act of extraordinary ambition. The work was slow. Friedrich I died in 1713 before it was finished. His successor, Friedrich Wilhelm I, had little patience for his father's extravagant project and had the unfinished panels shipped to the Berlin Armory. The room sat there, half-assembled and unused, for 3 years. Then, in 1716, the Russian Tsar Peter the Great came to visit the Prussian court. Peter was a man of enormous appetites and relentless vision. He had spent years trying to modernize Russia, to transform it into a power that could compete with the great European states. He was charmed by what he saw when he visited Prussia, and he was particularly struck by the amber panels sitting unused in storage. Seizing an opportunity for a political alliance, Friedrich Wilhelm offered the panels as a gift. The entire unfinished amber room was packed into 18 large boxes and shipped to St. Petersburg. The diplomatic gesture worked. Russia and Prussia aligned, and the amber panels crossed a continent to begin their next chapter. For nearly 40 years, the panels moved from palace to palace in Russia, not quite finding a permanent home. Then, in 1755, Tsarina Elizabeth ordered the room relocated to the Catherine Palace at Tsarskoye Selo, the Tsar's village, outside St. Petersburg. The problem was scale. The original Prussian room had been designed for a much smaller space. Italian architect Bartolomeo Francesco Rastrelli was tasked with expanding it to fit the new, larger hall. He brought in additional amber from Berlin and redesigned the installation to fill the room's towering walls. Other craftsmen followed over subsequent decades, adding details, refining panels, incorporating new elements. By the time the work was complete in 1770, the amber room covered more than 590 square feet of wall space. It held over 6 tons of amber. The panels were backed with gold leaf. 18 mirrored columns lined the walls between the amber sections. Gilded cornices carved with wreaths hung above each one. Candelabras, carved reliefs, and mounted figurines filled the remaining surfaces. When candlelight hit the room, it produced something almost impossible to describe. Every surface glowed. The amber cast warm copper and orange light across the gold, and the mirrors multiplied it in every direction. Visitors described it as standing inside a living flame. It became a meditation chamber for Elizabeth, a gathering room for Catherine the Great, and later a personal trophy space for Tsar Alexander II, who was a dedicated amber collector. For nearly 2 centuries, the room sat at the heart of Russian imperial culture. It was considered one of the great artistic treasures of the world. Then the 20th century arrived, and with it, war. By June 1941, Nazi Germany had launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in human history. 3 million German troops poured across the Soviet border along a front stretching nearly 2,000 miles. The advance was staggering in its speed and scale. Army Group North was moving toward Leningrad, and in the path of that advance sat the Catherine Palace. The curators responsible for protecting the palace's collections had already been watching the war develop for 2 years. When the invasion began, they moved quickly. Paintings were rolled and crated. Sculptures were packed. Furnishings were cataloged and prepared for evacuation. But the Amber Room presented a problem that no amount of preparation could fully solve. Over the past 200 years, the amber had dried out. The panels had become brittle. When the curators attempted to carefully dismantle the wall sections, the amber began to crack and crumble at the edges. Every attempt to remove a panel risked destroying it entirely. The decision was made to stop. Instead, the curators tried a different approach. They covered the amber walls in gauze, then layered thin wallpaper over the top, hoping the room would be overlooked or mistaken for a simple painted interior. It did not work. German forces occupied Tsarskoye Selo in September 1941. Nazi art specialists entered the Catherine Palace almost immediately. These were not ordinary soldiers. The Nazi regime had spent years building what was effectively an industrial-scale art theft operation. The Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg, known as the ERR, was a cultural looting organization that operated across occupied Europe, systematically identifying, cataloging, and seizing art and historical artifacts. On the Eastern Front, additional SS units were specifically tasked with cultural acquisition. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Adolf Hitler had a specific ideological justification for taking the Amber Room. In his view, it was a German creation. It had been designed by German craftsmen, constructed in Prussia, and only given to Russia as a diplomatic gift. In his mind, taking it back was not theft, it was repatriation. The Germans brought in their own amber specialists. They worked with precision and speed. In just 36 hours, they accomplished what the Soviet curators had been unable to do for weeks. The panels were carefully disassembled, packed into 27 crates, and loaded for transport. On October 14, 1941, the crates left Tsarskoye Selo. Their destination was Königsberg, a historic city on the Baltic coast of East Prussia, in what is now the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad. The crates arrived and were taken to Königsberg Castle, where the Amber Room was reconstructed and placed on public display in the Castle Museum. The man responsible for overseeing the installation was Alfred Rode, the museum's director. Rode was an expert on amber and its history, and by most accounts, his interest in the Amber Room went well beyond professional duty. He would spend long periods simply standing in the room, studying the panels. He examined their construction, their history, their provenance. By the time the room had been on display for 2 years, Rode may have known its details better than anyone alive. For roughly 2 years, the Amber Room sat in Königsberg Castle, while the war outside continued to shift. The German advance into the Soviet Union eventually stalled. Stalingrad fell to the Red Army in February 1943. Later that year, Rode was advised to begin preparing the room for removal. The situation was becoming dangerous. Allied bombing campaigns were intensifying. In August 1944, the Royal Air Force conducted devastating raids on Königsberg, reducing much of the historic city to rubble. The Castle Museum took heavy damage, and with that, the documented trail of the Amber Room ends. What happened next is the question that has occupied researchers, intelligence agencies, and obsessive treasure hunters for decades. Because after August 1944, the 27 crates of amber panels, gold leaf, gemstones, and mirrors simply ceased to appear in any verified historical record. The first person who might have known the answer was Alfred Rode. He survived the bombing and the subsequent Soviet siege of Königsberg, which fell to the Red Army in April 1945. The Soviets were desperate to find the amber room and questioned Rode extensively about its fate. His answers were contradictory. In January 1944, Rode had told his son that the amber room had been moved to a safe place. In September 1944, he wrote to his superiors claiming the majority of the room had survived and was secure. When the Soviets questioned him directly after the war, he gave them conflicting versions of where the panels had been stored. He was scheduled for further interrogation. The night before that session, Rode and his wife died of typhus. There was an outbreak at the time, which made the deaths plausible. But when Soviet investigators went to recover the bodies, they were gone. The doctor who had signed the death certificates had also disappeared without any trace. The mystery deepened from there. Several theories have emerged over the decades, and each has attracted serious investigation. The first, and arguably the most probable, is that the Amber Room was destroyed in the 1944 bombing of Königsberg Castle. Temperatures inside burning structures can reach levels that would incinerate organic material entirely. Amber, as fossilized tree resin, would decompose rapidly in intense heat, leaving behind little to no recognizable trace. Many historians have concluded that the panels simply burned along with the castle, and that the mystery has persisted not because the room still exists somewhere, but because no definitive physical proof of its destruction was ever recovered. The second theory involves Königsberg Castle itself and the Soviets. Some historians and Kaliningrad residents have argued that Soviet forces found the Amber Room in the castle cellars after the battle. According to this theory, the room was still largely intact, but Soviet officials chose not to reveal this publicly, preferring to maintain the narrative that the Nazis had destroyed it. This would have served as useful Cold War propaganda, keeping a wound in the national memory that could be directed at Germany. What gives this theory some traction is a specific decision made in 1968. Despite protests from historians and archaeologists around the world, Soviet General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev ordered Königsberg Castle to be demolished. The ruins, the last known location of the Amber Room, were leveled. Any possibility of an on-site archaeological examination was permanently eliminated. No official explanation was given for the timing. The third theory involves the sea. As Soviet forces closed in on East Prussia in early 1945, the German military launched one of the largest naval evacuations in history, Operation Hannibal. The operation transported over 1 million German soldiers and civilians out of East Prussia by ship across the Baltic. Among the vessels involved was a German steamer called the Karlsruhe. Documentation shows the Karlsruhe left Königsberg in early 1945 carrying a large cargo and over 1,000 people on board. The ship was later sunk. In recent years, Polish divers located a wreck believed to be the Karlsruhe on the floor of the Baltic Sea. Researchers involved in the discovery have noted that if the Amber Room panels were loaded aboard the ship before it sank, they could still be sitting on the seabed in their crates. The investigation is ongoing. A fourth theory has circulated less seriously, but has never been entirely dismissed. It holds that Joseph Stalin, aware of the Nazi interest in the Amber Room, had a duplicate created before the invasion and allowed the Germans to take the fake. Under this scenario, the real panels were hidden somewhere in the Soviet interior. No evidence has ever emerged to support this, and most serious historians discount it entirely. What has never been in doubt is the danger that surrounded anyone who got too close to the question. Georg Stein was a former German soldier who became one of the most dedicated amateur historians ever to search for the Amber Room. He spent years following leads, examining documents, and tracing possible hiding locations across Germany and Eastern Europe. In 1987, his body was found in a forest in Bavaria. He had been murdered and disemboweled with a scalpel. No one was ever charged. General Yuri Gusev was a senior figure in Russian foreign intelligence. In 1992, he He was identified as the source for a journalist who had been investigating the whereabouts of the Amber Room. Shortly after that connection became known, Gusev died in a car accident. Alfred Rode and his wife died of typhus before they could be questioned further. Their bodies disappeared. Their doctor disappeared. The pattern has become known informally as the Amber Room curse. Whether it reflects something deliberate or simply the statistical weight of dangerous obsession in a violent century is impossible to say. By 1997, a fragment of the original room surfaced for the first time. German art investigators received a tip that someone was attempting to sell a mosaic panel that matched the Amber Room's description. They raided the office of the seller's lawyer and recovered one of the room's original stone mosaic panels in Bremen. The seller was the son of a deceased German soldier and had no knowledge of the panel's origin or of any other pieces. It was a genuine fragment of the original room, but it told investigators nothing about where the rest of it had gone. The panel was eventually repatriated to Russia in 2000. It remains one of only a handful of confirmed surviving pieces from the original installation. Meanwhile, the Soviet government had not been waiting for the mystery to resolve itself. In 1979, a decision was made to reconstruct the Amber Room from scratch. It was an enormous undertaking. Craftsmen worked from historical photographs, the few surviving technical documents, and the expertise of specialists in amber carving and Baroque design. The work took 24 years. In 2003, the reconstruction was completed and inaugurated in a ceremony attended by Russian President Vladimir Putin and German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder. The timing was deliberate. It marked the 300th anniversary of the founding of St. Petersburg, the city that Peter the Great had built, and where the original room had first arrived as a gift nearly 3 centuries earlier. The reconstruction cost $11 million. It now stands in the Catherine Palace at Tsarskoye Selo, open to visitors, and by all accounts it is a stunning achievement. The craftsmen who built it spent decades mastering techniques that had been largely lost to history. But it is not the original. The original amber panels were backed with gold leaf that cannot be replicated exactly. The amber itself came from Baltic deposits that have since been significantly depleted. The specific combination of materials, construction methods, and historical resonance that made the original room what it was cannot be reproduced. The reconstruction is a monument to what was lost. It is not a replacement. What happened to the real Amber Room? Most historians who have studied the evidence in depth lean toward the destruction theory. The bombing of Königsberg in 1944 was thorough and catastrophic. The castle burned. Organic material does not survive in that kind of fire. The panels that had glowed for centuries in Russian palaces, that had been a symbol of Prussian artistry and Russian imperial splendor, likely ceased to exist one night in August 1944 in the ruins of a burning German castle. But there is no proof. No surviving witnesses gave a full account. The man who knew most took his secrets with him when he died the night before he was supposed to talk. The physical site was demolished by Soviet order in 1968. The crates, if they were moved before the bombing, have never been found. And the Baltic Sea has not yet given up whatever the Karlsruhe may be carrying on its floor. The Amber Room has been missing for 80 years. It may be ash. It may be locked in a vault somewhere, known only to people who have chosen to stay quiet. It may be sitting in the cold darkness at the bottom of the Baltic, sealed inside rotting wooden crates, waiting. What is certain is this: it was one of the most extraordinary objects ever made by human hands. It took nearly 70 years and the combined skill of craftsmen from Prussia, Denmark, Italy, and Russia to create it. It passed through the hands of kings, emperors, and czars. It survived 2 centuries of politics, revolution, and war. And in the end, it was taken by force, swallowed by chaos, and never seen again. Subscribe to World War II, Steel and Power for more great stories from this monumental era.